This is the interview with Mr. McCabe. Okay, so are you for or against inheritance tax?
I am in favor of the inheritance tax.
Okay. Why do you think it is fair to take money away from the heirs to give it to the government?
Well, part of the problem is that a lot of the money today that's being passed on from one heir to another one has never been taxed to begin with. It's been earned through investments, or it's been trusts from family to family, been handed down, and therefore has not been subject to any type of federal taxes. And so therefore, it's like you and I, who have to pay our income tax every year. It's only fair that this money be taxed at some time with regards to its being passed or distributed from one generation to the next.
Why do you think the wealthy should be taxed and their money be sent to the government when they've worked hard for it?
I guess it depends upon how you define working hard. Again, we're talking about the upper 2% of society, and a lot of this money is money that's been made off investments, and sometimes it's been made over years and years of investments. It's just been sitting in accounts. And other times it's even been sitting in offshore accounts, so it hasn't been subject to any type of tax in the United States. So when you say working hard, it's open for a lot of interpretation.
Why are you against repealing the inheritance tax?
It's going to cost the government a lot of money. It's been estimated that if we repeal the inheritance tax, it could cost the government up to $250 or $260 million a year. And yes, our government spends in the trillions, but in the fact that we have the deficit we do, if you take that much more away from it, it's going to cause that much more of a problem.
Do you think there's any other way, if we were to repeal the inheritance tax, to make up for that money?
There'd be two different things that could be done. One, you would have to make a higher rate of tax for investment income. That's the other thing that you have to understand. A lot of this inheritance tax referring to is from money that's been an investment, and investment income, such as former Governor Romney, pays a lower tax rate than, say, I do as a middle-class American with regards to the flat rate that I pay on my income that I earn. Yet the investment that he may make could be in the millions, but he's only going to pay a 14 or 15% on that. So one way you could make up for this, if you eliminate the inheritance taxes, you could increase the tax on investments. Another way you could make up for this is you could require a lot of investors who have offshore accounts that if they do any of the business through the United States, even though their accounts are located offshore, they'll still be subject to some form of tax.
Do you feel like this tax is necessary?
Until we come up with a solution to fill the void that this tax is presently doing, yes, it's definitely necessary. But again, come up with a way, as we just mentioned, that would be acted into law and accepted by people. Now, the biggest thing you have to remember about our entire tax code is, in a sense, it's voluntary. Yes, we're all required to pay taxes, but and we have the IRS who investigates tax fraud, but tax fraud is hard to prove and it's rarely even investigated.
Wouldn't it be more fair if we had a flat tax in which everyone would pay the same amount?
If we had done that 75 to 100 years ago, yes. To try to do that today, what that would mean is for a lot of middle-income people like myself, our taxes would actually go up if we were to keep the same tax income coming into the federal government. If we were to go to a flat tax rate that, say, would actually be fair to everyone, we'd be even more in debt. So we'd have to reduce spending dramatically. And everybody talks about, well, we can cut spending. Well, what programs are we going to start with? Because when you start talking about cutting spending, no matter what program you mention, there's always going to be somebody there who's going to ardently defend that particular program.
Do you think that the inheritance tax is the reason for job barriers?
A reason for job barriers? I'm not sure what you mean.
Like unemployment?
Does the inheritance tax lead to unemployment?
Does it affect it?
Does it affect it? I don't really think so. Again, a lot of the income that we're talking about with regards to inheritance tax is investment income. It's not income that's necessarily going into companies and creating more jobs, but rather it's investment income that goes to a variety of different places.
But what about the people who had to sell their companies because of inheritance tax?
I'm not aware of any. Now, maybe, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I'm not aware of any. And I would say if there was a company that had to sell the company as a result of inheritance tax, I'd say that was a company that was probably on its way out to begin with. Because inheritance tax is a percentage of what the company makes. It's not all of it.
Okay. Do you think it's fair to only tax America's wealthiest?
Everybody gets taxed. Are you referring to
The inheritance tax.
Well, again, because as you pointed out earlier, is it fair to tax money that's already been, people worked hard to earn, which is probably subject to income tax anyway. And so the reason the inheritance tax has a minimum balance or minimum price, I guess you call it, of $5.1 million is because the government has done the study to determine that this are the kind of money that has been, again, sitting in accounts, has been placed in trust and other things, and has not been subject to regular taxes. If we were to start taxing everyone's inheritance, then there'd be a different problem, because you'd be talking, would be putting some real hardship on some people. You'd be talking about someone who might leave a account of a few $1,000s. There's even a court case, Reed versus Reed, dealing with a adopted child whose total revenue or total estate was less than $1,000, or approximately $1,000. Now this was back in the 1960s or 70s, I believe it was, but the total estate was less than $1,000. And if something like that had been subject to taxes, then even the court case to try to determine who was going to resolve that would be more expensive than the inheritance and the tax that was left over, or the tax that was taken out of it, I mean.
All right, thank you.